Alright, hello and welcome back to Crypto Warehouse. Welcome back to the Shark stream. It's a good day today. It's a good day. We're doing pretty well. Like I said last stream though, I'm not too concerned about today. I'm not too concerned about Thursday. Next week, Monday, is the day for me. Right, that's the stream I think, which is going to matter the most. Again, most of these streams in the past couple, however many it's been, since we kind of really came down to this area, it's kind of all been the same. You know, we haven't really done too much stream by stream. We've been looking at the same thing over and over again on daily. Lower time frame, it's really kind of been going backwards and forwards between two main areas, which we've been looking at as well. I'm going to start the timer while I'm talking. Hopefully everyone's good on YouTube and Square. I know I'm not supposed to say that, but you know. Nonetheless, so yeah, like I said, today's stream still, I do think, is going to be more of those dudder ones where, you know, I'll talk about stuff. You know, we have come down a bit. You know, we've come right back down to the area we were in last stream and the stream before that. So not really too much change. I'm really not going to talk about a lot today in terms of change. But and even then, we covered a lot of the high time frame last stream, so it might be a bit of a more relaxed stream because I've already talked about most of this stuff. But I'm going to talk about it anyway. Again, so hopefully you're all good. Good afternoon to all of you. Let's see the chat. In agenda today, Kishan, KB, thank you all for joining. Appreciate you guys for being here at the start of the stream. Going on to Square, we have some people. Let me have a little look. Mary Jesus, the actual Mary Jesus is here. Can't believe it. Hello, thank you for joining the stream. AD, Faisal, thank you all for being here. Mags has just come here as well. I need some water. Feeling groggy. Before we start, okay. So, CoinGlass, 409 million, 24-hour liquidation. It makes sense. We have kind of been like this, right? We've been in this little bubble, little range, and then we came down fast in the same range. You know, we haven't really got out of anywhere yet. We're in the same range. You know, we haven't got anywhere else differently. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe people got used to what we've been doing since, I don't even know when it's, we'll look at it in a second. I don't know when that we came down to this, when we dumped to 60k and came back upwards, whenever that exact day was. So ever since then, we've been in the same place. So, you know, not surprised. I'm seeing a bit of we're seeing a bit of liquidation there from some of these people. Anyways, economic calendar, nothing really going on. Very bright screen. Nothing, again, I'm on highest impact potential. You know, I'm on highest importance. I'm obviously looking at America. I don't really care about Canada. No one really cares about Canada. So it's really only looking at the American politics, which, you know, has the most interest. And obviously maybe Asia occasionally, but there's nothing here, so it doesn't matter anyway. And in terms of actually what America's doing, not much again. You know, I mean, maybe I don't. Is that going to matter? Probably not. maybe. So yeah, nothing really going on there anyway. Coin market cap, we can see we're at 66,265, which is pretty much, I remember the exact same number I read out yesterday. Oh no, it was 6628 or something, or 250. I can't remember. It was the same number. We're literally at the same number. 24-hour change, we're down to 0.5% because we came up a tiny bit and we come back down again. So we're going to come down to 2.5% totally. But in terms of relative to what we've done, we've basically just recovered the entire move we had yesterday, I'm pretty sure. We've literally just sat exactly where we are. Give or take, I think. I'm not sure the exact prices, but I'm pretty sure we're pretty much in the same place we were in last stream. 5.2, 1% down 7 day on Bitcoin. So yeah, 1920. I think it was actually. I think we're down a bit more. I think maybe relatively we're down like a couple $100, you know, for Bitcoin. Maybe about $50 for Ethereum. Relative to last streams. A star, I believe it would have been. So about 2.5% ish for Ethereum, and about another 5% down 7 days. So what's Solana doing? 80.64, 4.5% down 24 hour. Yeah. Again, we're going to see this number across the board, but the main one, which is very happy to see, not that, is SERPs at 21.5%, which is very nice. We have come down a bit lower. I think it was like 20.8%, but we're in the 21.5% area, which is very nice. But I mean, the market, I mean, I'm not saying Maple is definitely not a coin which moves in relation to anything else really, which I look at, so that's a good thing. But if we compare what the markets, you know, the potential outlook on the markets, there's not really that much going on right now, which suggests we're going to be going up quite heavy anytime soon. And if we think about what we wanted for SERP ever since the all-time high, and then we start to reverse, we've wanted it to come to 21.5 cents, 22 cents for a long time. And then obviously the idea then from being to get to this area would be we would go back upwards, which, you know, is the next step in the process, which obviously needs to happen within this area. So hopefully that can happen. Not really happened just yet. Nothing's really changed in terms of SERP. We've only really just got to these prices, so I'm not expecting anything immediate. But it would be nice, you know, comparative to the previous price action of SERP versus everything else. It's definitely had its own course and it's played out its own course. So I would hope it would be the one coin going up in this period. Hopefully soon, potentially. Last one, we have Waluti Financial at about 11.5 cents, which is kind of in the same area, a tiny bit less than the area. So basically, I think most of what we're going to talk about today is going to be the same as yesterday, or last stream, I should say. But we have some lower prices, like by a few points. I don't know what the translatory term is in terms of, you know, Bitcoin could be down a couple $100, Ethereum down $50. So relative to their own scopes, we're down a tiny bit. And then we get to the chart. So here we are. So yeah, since basically getting towards the start of the month, basically, you know, the first week of the month till now, we've been in this same area. You know, this has kind of been the area we've been sitting in for a long time. Yeah, we are, albeit low. We are, albeit getting past. And this is a concerning thing as well. I don't know why I deleted these lines, and now I've drawn the middle lines. Now there's 15 million more lines I have to look at. I'm just going to hide them because it's getting a bit messy. So I'll give a quick update, or not an update, a refresh on what, you know, what all these boxes are, you know, in case we've forgotten or anything like that. I'm not co-hosting. Okay, I'm not reading the square chat. I'm just not reading the square chat. So in terms of what we have obviously these main areas here, which we, as soon as we kind of got to the 4 hour and the 1 hour, you know, quite a bit ago. Basically, when we started again on, probably would have been the Monday, I reckon, somewhere around here on the night, if we drew out these areas and basically said, okay, we've got this high area of resistance, we've got this low, we are kind of within this range. I expect this to be support and resistance for a bit. However, my general outlook will be eventually seeing higher towards the 81 area. Obviously, we'll show the lines back up again in a second after I've gone through what we have right now, and then we can look at where the areas are, because we are in the equilibrium, which was where we found this resistance, and we found the previous resistances over here. So We've seen this area before. We found resistance again. We've come down. It kind of makes sense. From there, though, we've come back down into our green area. Now, the important thing, though, with what we've done here is definitely going to be the print past the actual lows. And relative to the 4-hour scope, this is, this isn't just some little low, getting past, for example, one of these random little candle lows. This is actually a main low within the 4-hour. This is actually a decently higher time frame low. Now, we haven't done anything on the daily or super high time frame, or relative to what you guys like, I suppose. If you're a 1 second trader, then obviously this is going to be, this is going to be the rest of your life. You're going to be in a coffin before you see a weekly candle print. But again, nothing really printing here. We haven't really seen much. And again, it's very it's slowing down. It's a bit, boring price action. You can see, especially, it was kind of like when we were back here, these candles, especially this period between the 1st of December and the end of December. Again, it's Christmas, to be fair, it's Christmas. But nothing happened, really. I mean, the entire period between the 1st of December and the end of December literally came out like a grand positive. A grand positive. That was it. Nothing happened. Obviously, a lot happened in between. And it's a flawed thought process to think, oh, nothing happened. Because yes, there was something happened, but same here. It's like we've had these 3 weeks basically since the coming into the transition, kind of the first and the second week of February till now. We've not really moved too much, but like I said, we haven't printed past anything major daily, weekly time frame. As we kind of talked about on previous streams. As we want to kind of come above into some of these areas, above some of these lows, or this low, which is that low, and kind of this main area on the weekly. This is kind of a for me, an interesting area, and I think considering what we came to, again, we came to this area on the monthly for this low, and we kind of found this as support, and then came up quite quickly, which is why I have this blue area marked out with the midpoint at about 65.1, which we haven't really gotten past. We haven't really seen a major print and move past this, and especially considering the fact that this is a weekly support point, so we want to be really looking at the weekly, where the weeklies print realistically. I don't really care if a 1 hour prints through 65.170 in relation to this weekly area. I don't really care about that because it's not kind of, the time frames don't match. But we can still look at it as a potential support point if we consider the fact that a weekly candle can use it as a wick low, as we saw with this 9th of February open candle here. We can see we worked to that midpoint pretty much exactly there with that low, so we can use it as an idea of support on any time frame lower than the weekly. From there, though, going back to the daily. Still nothing of concern here. We kind of came past these 2 lows with this move, and then we've come right back upwards above them, which would be a good thing to be looking at if we consider it for a move back upwards. Again, this is we see this here. It's a quite a common occurrence sometimes if you want a reversal, or it's a good sign. There could be a reversal. Like, okay, we have multiple lows we've just moved past in quick succession, and then we have failed to print past a singular one of them. It's a good sign. It could be a good sign, potentially, obviously not financial advice, that we might want to start to move a bit more, and this could be the final straw before I move upwards. And considering what we want to happen, it would be nice to see that. All things considered, obviously we've had periods like this before. We have these 2 equal highs here, we whip past it, we don't print, we print lower than them, and then we continue downwards. And it wasn't a reversal in the sense that we had a major low and lower high and lower low, and then we had this thing occur, and then we started an uptrend. It wasn't exactly that, but in terms of the individual moves up and down, same thing. Down here, it's kind of a very common occurrence. It's if you fail to print a low, it's not a reversal on the entire trend, but okay, you've wicked past this. It's not a guarantee. But you've wicked past this, you fail. Because, for example, here in Turkey we didn't wick past it, but it's still the same kind of idea. We did print there, to be fair. I mean, it's my argument's breaking down. But it's quite common to have pretty much every time we've had here, we've had a high or a low move past and fail to print, which is it's not a guarantee. Like I said, it's not a guarantee, but it's okay. We could look at the idea that we've came past all these lows, used them in some regard, came back up and printed, that we could start to go back upwards again, And whether it be we print negative or we print positive, it doesn't matter, as we can clearly see with these two, and even these two. This is like the perfect example. You know what, we should print this out and put it in a book. This shows every sort of example: a negatively printing wick on the low, a positive printing wick on the low, and on the highs. We have a positive printing wick on the high and a negative printing high on the low. High there, which is really, really nice. Anyway, besides the point. We have that going on daily. So if that can continue to occur, again, we haven't printed or anything, so if that can continue to happen and we don't get below these areas, which would be nice, then we could see, I keep on hitting this arm, you know what, I need a wireless arm stand, I need a floating microphone, which can just have some sort of like rocket thrusters or something, or some sort of fan system which floats itself. That would be quite nice. I need someone to invent that quickly. Because I keep on, doing this. Anyways, so if that, all things continue to happen, if we stay in the current scenario we're in right now, we don't really move across the next 10 hours, then that will occur. Not a guarantee, but it's a good sign that we could, on the daily, which I kind of pay more attention to when it comes to, like, if I'm going to be using the 4 hours to the daily, where would I want to hold my bias in terms of the future price action? I'm going to be looking at daily, personally. So, relative to that on the daily, it's still positive. And not only is it still positive, it's a positive occurrence, not just a staying positive. It's not like, we haven't printed past any lows, but we're still floating. It's not like it's not like we've wicked at 66.563 and we're kind of just floating. We've fully came past these lows and have come back upwards and have opportunity to print higher than them. So it's an active occurrence in price, which could allow us to potentially reverse and start to go back upwards, which would be very, very nice. Anyways, going back to the 4 hour with some more context. So we have that again. We had a very massive low. So in terms of what we have on the 4 hour, and if we were to just look at the 4 hour, it's very negative. We have this massive just run downwards. We have those two lows, which we've printed past. Yes, we have come to support. We're at the top end of this support down here, but we're slowly but surely retracing back up into this gap. And, we probably will use this as somewhat a resistance. Again, we have we have technically properly started into a what should be a down move in terms of we have printed past lows, and we do have a big resistance here. It's not just a slow trickle downwards, it's a massive expansion down. If we consider every move we've had on the way downwards versus on the way upwards, this was very good, but in terms of this move, we've had very big expansions downwards and not really the same reciprocation on the way upwards. We have had very slow moves on the way upwards towards points of resistance, but we haven't had that real expansive move back upwards, printing past anything of significance. We technically did print past these two highs here, but it wasn't anything of concern. Again, if we show the areas, we were in a area of resistance in this range, but other than that, we didn't really... we were printing above highs, but it didn't really... we were in a point of resistance. We weren't in a point which was, sunshines and daisies and all that sort of stuff. It was a proper, it was an area where if we were to see resistance, it's probably going to be here, which is within that 68, 69k area, basically. And from there, we then had this massive move downwards. So this is kind of the idea, okay, we are continuously doing more stronger moves downwards on the way upwards. And this is the strongest move of all of these moves. This is a very, very strong move. So it's not a great sign on the 4 hour time frame. And if we really think about it, the time it'll take to happen on the 4 hour, could we see that move back downwards towards 65, 140, or at least towards 65, 140 for those lows, to then eventually print on the daily and not see a wick pass, which is a good sign, or not a good sign. It is a good thought, which could show a lot of signs in relation to if we're going upwards or we're going to actually start to go downwards again. So I think we're definitely going to continue to come back up into this area, whether it be we've stopped at 66.6. We have come a decent amount into it, but probably going to be seeing a bit more into this area. In terms of areas of support resistance, we probably want to mark this out or bring this across, because obviously this was a resistance area, which obviously we printed past and used as support, and obviously we have now printed past and is an area here and is within this gap here. So we've actually come to near that midpoint, not quite on the midpoint, but near the midpoint. So a bit more of a resistance, a bit more confidence on this area being stronger resistance anyway, than it just being a random gap. From there, though, we are still within our supports. We haven't printed through this main, I think is on the 1 hour, mainly where I've been looking at the 1 hour. I kind of want to look at the 4 hour now because it's a bit hard to zoom out and do all this. So I'm just going to have to look at the 4 hour because I can't show everything in one screen. But there is this green area, which is a support, and there was an area on the 1 hour, which is this grey area, which is this last... Oh, I think it's on the 1 hour. So we have this on the 1 hour. So we do have these supports here still. And we are at this low of this support at 64,945, and we haven't printed past any low of it. We are still within it, and we are getting quite a bit up. We have at least printed past that midpoint. Obviously, what would be a bad sign would be to print at that low, see resistance at the midpoint, and then come through it. That would obviously be a bad sign. That would probably be a good reversal to see it as resistance, which we don't really want to see. We do want to see that move upwards, which obviously would be nice because, again, contextually on the weekly, we've had the massive move downwards, a very pathetic move back up into this area, and I still will be looking at this entire area as a retracement because we didn't have a valid retracement. We didn't have a major retracement up into this area. Relative to the lower time frames, maybe on the daily 4 hour, this was pretty relative. We did have a decent. We can actually see it with this on the 4 hour. We did have our trend on the way downwards, which allowed us to have the range be here. So it was valid on the daily. On the weekly, we didn't really have a valid range, which is kind of where this whole trend has been. I've been focusing this trend on this whole, all these periods on the way upwards has been a focus on the weekly. So to see it not really respect on the weekly is. It's something I still have in the back of my mind. Still, I am going to focus on. Not now though, because we are more focusing on not ignoring the weekly time frame, but kind of looking at this range relative to the fact that we've respected this range perfectly fine and printed through. So the next range is going to be these two. So we do, in some sense, want to see a move back upwards into this area. And the noise of the 1 hour and the 4 hour. We can see on the weekly we can't see it, right? Because it's a lot of noise relative to the weekly anyway. It's a lot of noise. It's a lot of movement, which is kind of meaningless. Again, especially these three candles, we can still see that green area and the red area, which is what I marked out when we first came into this range, being not the major, because again, I could have drawn the lowest support out and the highest support out. And I think the red area is pretty much the highest support. The green area wasn't quite the high support. The grey area is, but the green was the main support area we were using within this range. So we can see we're still staying in this area. So it's just small noise. We can see how big the moves actually are if we zoom out on the weekly compared to what we've already had. And we've clearly slowed down. We've clearly come to the support point on the monthly at 60,000-ish, 60,000, like I said, if I actually go to the low. We then came up with pretty fastly. I'm horrible. The words aren't coming out properly today. We came up pretty fast from this area, putting a decently small body relative to the wick. So if we draw out this full rejection block, we can see we've been staying above that midpoint pretty fine. We've actually used it once or twice with these two candles, kind of coming into it on this third one here. So if we can stay above this candle, and we can clearly see we've completely slowed down. We've hit into the support. We've formed a support point, being this rejection block, and we've not come down. And maybe we just have a massive expansion and come right past it. Fine, maybe we need a little bit of a thing. But if we actually really pay attention to the weekly, what should happen, not financial advice, what we should want to see is that retracement back upwards. Just like we saw with this last time, where we did have this, relative to the daily that is, we did have these ranges on the daily, and we did respect them on the way downwards. And just like we should see here, if we do the high to low, we should see, if we want to continue downwards, we should see that move back upwards towards these 81k areas before we come back down again. Again, we have our monthly support. We have 52k. We have some areas. If we look at the ranges, we do have a few areas to pay attention to. But that's not what I'm concerning myself with right now. My current concern is going to be that move back upwards, which we have. I don't think we're going to. Do we get towards 86k? I think for me, I just want to really pay attention. I mean, to be fair, the high end of this gap is about 86.3. I don't know what this is. Let me clear this. So I do still want to pay attention to this main gap and this retracement on the weekly. So I've had this on World Street Financial as well. Even though I had certain things where, we're going to go down, we're going to do this. And this is important to talk about on stream, because if not financial advice, I don't think you should guys trade anything I talk about. It's all theoretical, this, that, the other. But I do like to look at the 1 hour, 4 hour, just for some more proactive thoughts and something to actually look at. Because if I just looked at the weekly every stream, I could just at the start of the month record me going through the charts for a month, or on the weekly for that month, and just play it for the stream, because it would be the same thing over and over again until we hit that point where if we have a couple candles upwards, that's going to be a couple weeks upwards, which is going to be into the next month. You know what I mean? So this is going to take some time to happen. And in the meantime, we're having all these things going on the 4 hour. So, it's just what it is. But again, the main thing as well is this monthly print. This is very important. I do think this is very important. And like I said, my theory was, this is the same story with, we had on the 1 hour, 4 hour on the Ranger currently, in terms of, if we think about the 4 hour and the daily, where we didn't have that print yet on the daily, but we did on the 4 hour, if we continue to not have that print on the daily, this could be a good sign that we want to go back upwards on the daily for Bitcoin. Same thing here, so we have this major low, I would argue, obviously low, we have these high highs and high lows for Bitcoin, coming up all the way to our all-time high, fine. But we can see we are at this low and we've fully come past it. So if we continue to do what we're doing and do print past this, this is super negative, but it's also really positive, because not only the negativity is obviously for the fact that we've printed a low, but what do we want to see in a trend, right? Is you want to see, here for example, it's like we're super positive, and printing past that high during this March period was very positive, but it was also very negative, because we see that print past the high, and in an uptrend, in theory, obviously not financial advice, but this is quite a high level. I think if you look across a lot of strategies, whatever it may use, whether it be just purely on maths, just purely on price action, or anywhere in between, you normally see some sort of occurrence of an uptrend or downtrend, and it's just a very top end thing. It's just very. I think trends are very unanimous across the board, right? So I think it's safe to talk about trends. But what do we see at every point? In theory, on the way upwards, right? And in the same case of on the way downwards, what do we see on every occurrence of moving past to continue a trend, right? It's that kind of recovery back upwards. It's that retracement back upwards. So it's the same concept here, and we can see it here. Obviously, this was bad because not only did we not print past this high, we've whipped past it and printed lower. This is a negative sign for the fact that we haven't continued trend. So if we were to print past the low, this would be downtrend. And obviously, we can see once we did that, we then expanded downwards. So I think at any point, regardless of how you interact with that high, you still should see that reversal in some sense. Whether it be you print past that high and you're continuing an uptrend and you're just having a higher low, or you wick past that high and it's quite expansive on the way downwards and you have a chance to print lower and continue down or start a downtrend, right? So either sense, or either way, you can see pretty much every position. Dependent, again, it's always dependent on we kind of have these massive expansions which don't just get past these highs and do come down. Obviously, I get that, but on very common highs, in a normal range, a lot of these highs, for example, or anything you might see on some lower time frames, within these ranges. For example, this high, we kind of came past it and then came down. Smaller highs, just something a bit closer. For our example, we can see on both regards we have this happening where we have that high. In this case, we printed. And then, even though this is a very positive thing, this is the most positive thing to happen for Bitcoin in this period between the 2021 and 2024, we still came down, from the high to the low of about 34%, right? So it's still positive, but it's still negative. But all it allows us to do is we've printed that high, we've recovered this gap, and then we came back upwards again. So it's still positive, right? It's still positive, but it's just a general move, right? So it's the same thing here. I'm going to talk about the same thing here, right? Where we have a move past the low. Now again, it ranges. It can range in intensity, but the general idea being we have that low, and in a normal trend, especially starting this trend, we would want to see as soon as we've come past that low and then we found our point to stop moving, we then should see a move back upwards, right? Because obviously in this case, we did move past this low and we hadn't quite found our point to stop at. We tried with this gap, we produced this gap, we came back up into it with resistance. We then slowly retraced, found this gap, then found this as support, not really too expansive, and then reversed and came back upwards. Reversed this gap area, used it as support, and continued upwards. So we did come past this low, and as soon as we see that low, we want to see that move back upwards. We just didn't quite find our support point. Same with this. It's once we printed that high, we could have come even lower. If that gap wasn't there, we could have come even lower. But it's the fact that we had that support there, which stopped us from going down, and it's why we didn't really have that much of a move downwards. And same with here. Again, this is kind of price discovery. We didn't really know exactly where the high was going to be. We can look at ranges, we can look at math when it doesn't come to price action, but it's the same concept, right? It's the same concept. So same thing here. We continue to come past this low until we find our support, which in this case could be the high end of this support at about 61k, where our low was about 60k. It could come, within this range. It all just depends on where we print, right? Even if we print here, we could have one more candle downwards towards 52k and come down before we go upwards. But the main topic is we should expect to see that move back upwards towards something above equilibrium, something for a lower high, if we do print that low. And even if we don't print that low, we should see a move back upwards, right? But to be fair, on the monthly, if we do see a print higher than 74k, which is it likely, depends on how we move in the next 5 days. It depends. In the next 5 days, we reverse on the daily, we start to go upwards to our high end of our range, we then break above our high end of our range and start to rip upwards towards 81, 82k, which is this monthly gap. It's the weekly gap, it's the daily gap. This is definitely going to be a resistance point, but by the time that occurs, is it going to be 5 days? So within 5 days, if we do print, which is obviously next Monday, that makes sense. Wait, when is the when's the actual date? Oh no, it's Sunday. No, it's Sunday. For the first, yeah, okay, right, yeah. So Sunday, going into Monday, which is when I actually stream. So regardless, Monday, which is the important stream, will be us talking about this candle and if we print it or not. So hopefully by then, do we expect to see in the next 5 days or 6 days, because technically within 5 days and 11 hours, do we see that move upwards? I don't know if it's going to happen that fast. I don't know personally. We'd hope to see it, but it's not it's not a guarantee. Yeah, it's not something. Again, I've talked about things previously on charts, a long time ago, or even relatively recently, where I've understood where I think, or how we're gonna move, and where we think we are gonna go to. It's always the time element. It's always when do we get there? And apart from, for me, I mean, honestly, unless I'm missing out on some sort of secret method which unlocks the time element and I can just figure out how long something's going to take, it's always that element which is unknown to me, which is how long something's going to take or when it's going to start. You can watch price action and watch lower time frames for reversal to watch for that to continue to print on the higher time frames, but other than that, I don't think there's really a prediction for time, so I just think what makes it easier for a prediction of time is if you're doing it on a lower time frame, right? So you can watch it within a humane time, within a few hours, and then it can occur. But when you're looking at the weekly and stuff and monthly, it's like, how do I know when this is going to happen? At what point does this happen, right? So I don't know when this is going to happen, and especially, like I said, with the move upwards towards 82, I can talk about the perceived outcome of what could happen on the daily, which could be positive, which could allow us to go up towards some of these prices at our higher end at 60,000 or 60, whatever it was, 69. But it's also then the fact that if we continue past that high, how long is it going to take for us to get towards new highs, and do we get there? That's the question. So that's why I think money is very important. Nonetheless, though, again, there's not much to talk about relative to the actual frame, apart from the daily print, which could potentially happen, and the fact that we've got this 4-hour resistance, which we could come up into. That's pretty much it, really. We've got a very tight support resistance thing going on here. Daily hasn't printed. We'll see how it goes. But proactively, I think I would look at 4 hour and 1 hour, and I think we do have a bit of a situation going on. You know, we definitely have a major print on the 1 hour with these lows, and on the 4 hour as well. We have these major gaps. We are coming back up into these areas. We are still within these ranges in some regard, but again, we do have this main gap on the 4 hour and this area on the 1 hour, which is also on the 4 hour, I believe, which is our main resistance. So if we were to see somewhat of resistance at any regard, it would probably be within this area at 66 or 66.6. Printing past these lows, we could probably want to go lower, you know, which would then in turn be, okay, on the daily, are we printing lower than where we need to be? So that's kind of a thing there. Relative to the daily as well, is, okay, we probably could see towards these lows before the day ends. So that's the thing I'm going to watch for. It's something, you know, I'd rather, instead of guessing, I'd rather just wait till it happens on Tuesday. So we'll see how it goes. Ethereum, I can hear my dog running around, and he's distracting. So we have Ethereum here. It's the same story. Okay, daily lows not printed past, 4 hour lows printed past with a gap, retracement back up into the gap. Previous resistances to be supports, or support to be resistances potentially. We don't really have a gap in any sense. Maybe we do actually, because again, Ethereum and Bitcoin have both been moving very similar. So I was very surprised we didn't have a gap. So it's kind of there. It's a bit higher up. We had our previous support, which could be a bit of resistance, but we're not really seeing it too much. We have this gap. We're kind of just about coming up into this previous gap, which we've used previously quite a few times. You know, in all these kind of areas here, used quite a few times, especially where we printed at. Obviously, we had the main order block here, which was this major low here. But other than that, we've had pretty smooth sailing in terms of using it as support. But other than that, we then could have that as resistance, which is the same thing we have on Bitcoin, where we have this gap area on the 4 hour, 1 hour, and we have our previous gap, which we've used back here, which could be resistance. We can see we're slightly getting up into it at 1928, but other than that, it's identical to Bitcoin. So my whole talk on what we have with Bitcoin is going to be applied to Ethereum as well. It's the same story. Weekly time frame, I've also talked about. It's the same story as well with Bitcoin, where we have this gap on the weekly, we have the gap on the daily, we have the low to the high here, which we want to get back up into at 2625. It's the same thing. It's all the same thing. I can look at the ranges. I believe it's a 1 hour 729 on Ethereum, which I think we have our equilibrium at in some capacity. Around about down here, I suppose, is probably the main area which we've used previously. I think this is the main area. I didn't really look at it too much on Bitcoin, to be fair. I think I'm mainly looking at the 1 hour here. For our kind of range, you can see we've kind of been within this scope, the upper end of this lower area. And our main talk has been printing lower than 2268 and seeing potential to get up here. Now, is it applicable? Oh, actually, I don't know if it's a higher range, to be fair. I don't know if I'm looking on the daily a higher range. Okay, I am. Perfect. I was wondering. I was like, that's a bit too low. But on the daily, on the actual range of the daily, where we can see we've had this print past this midline here, and then we can see we've been using this as resistance. So we can see this being played out quite nicely in terms of we have this area as resistance for this high. We have this being printed past this line here, which suggests we're in this range below, not up here, this range. We can see once we've formed past that low, we can see using this as resistance quite often, and using the extension as support quite a lot, quite a lot. But the importance there being, once we're in this range, we can come as high as 2430-ish, or what was it say actually? 2427, right? We can come as high as this area and print at it. As long as we don't print above it and we find it as resistance, we can come up as high as we want, right? We can come as high as we want. As long as we retrace, we're perfectly fine, right? So in terms of the sense that across the board, we want a bit of recovery, we want a move back upwards, but ultimately, we're pretty negative, right? Whether it be daily, weekly, we've printed past major lows on all these coins, right? So across the board, this is just a recovery. This is something we want on the higher time frames as well. This isn't just a 4 hour thing, a 1 hour thing. This is something we want to see. across the board, which is obviously we've had this major move down since the all-time high. We've seen continuous movements. We've seen massive expansion, small retracement, massive expansion again in terms of this move. So we want to potentially see that retracement, that recovery one more time back upwards before we continue lower. So this is just talking about the same concept we saw earlier. This is all earlier in terms of being this move here. This is the same concept, same explanation, same movements we should expect. So it's kind of just talking our way through a normal trend move downwards, which is having that major low, printing past area of importance, and then finding that lower high before we move lower. And again, we have our prices. We've got 1300 in certain regards. We probably have some area like a low at 1393. We've got areas back here. We have a small gap here, I suppose. If I were to draw out the void of it, which is going to be the two down close candles instead, we've got that there, I guess. But other than that, we don't really have. Actually, we also have this big old gap here as well. I should probably draw. In terms of where the void is, it's actually there. So we can see a balance actually between these two. Oops. Oh yeah, that's actually kind of where we touched into in terms of we have instead of it being at the gap, it's the whole candles, which is actually in between the two up close candles of it being this. So it's not really that much of a range. If you just look at the gap, it would be a bit higher to be fair, but it's all relative to where we are in the range, and we can see that kind of also sits in where we have with this gap as well, which is quite nice, I suppose. But regardless, that is what we have in this range here. So kind of touched into it. Nothing of concern. I don't really care about. But the main thing being, we have plenty of support on the way. Or we have what I could expect to be our main points on the way downwards, especially if we look on some higher ranges. I don't know if I really look at 6.5 too much on the thing, because there's nothing really here to actually pay attention to. And we looked at this last stream, the stream before. The higher, if you go to such a high range where it's very uncommon to see multiple lines within the current range you're in, you can use these areas of support resistance quite often, and they can work pretty well. But we don't really want to be doing that. We want to actually look at price action relative to the ranges rather than just use them as support resistance, because then it doesn't fall into, because there's only so much math you can look at, and there's only so much price action you can look at the same time, where I would rather look at more price action than math. Otherwise, you're just throwing darts blind, right? If it's just math, you're just drawing a multitude of numbers and you're hoping you find support somewhere. But it's more of a, you have the math, but it's more of a, you want to try to apply as much price action as possible to the math, just so you can have some sort of grounding in the chart, right? In some sort of life. So we don't want to go too high, so we can't actually look at any price action at all. But we can look at the price action relative to the ranges and look at it in that regard, and how we're responding off the ranges, which is more important, which is where the highs are, how we're forming relative to where we should find these forms. So, for example, this red candle, very, very important. We have order block. We have the order block here, where we have this sort of. I think if we go to the lower time frames where this grey area is, this is a resistance point. We can see we formed this and then printed through it very strongly there, printing through this gap as well, which is very important. So not only do we have an inverted gap here, we also have that major high here for that order block, which we didn't actually get to, unfortunately, but should still be a very strong area to pay attention to. So I guess I'll continue to have that marked out there, to be fair. I'll delete this gap because we already know about it. But other than that, we have our range. We're doing perfectly fine. 4-hour daily, same as Bitcoin. Not even going to bother talking about it. The high time frame for Ethereum, same as Bitcoin. Not even probably going to bother too much. I mean, I have talked about it. I've spent 15 minutes talking about it. So it's not right to say I'm not bothering talking about it, because I've already did. But like I said at the start of the stream, everything's doing the same thing. So once I cover Bitcoin and I get Bitcoin out of the way after the after 20 minutes or whatever, however long it is, that's it, really. That's the stream for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and kind of Solana. When it starts to get towards Syrup, kind of can change, but Syrup's been doing the same thing since the all-time high, so it's been the same thing to talk about. World Financial is the only thing I can really actually talk about, but like I said, I talked about it the last two streams, and we haven't done too much difference. We haven't moved differently. And again, I'm not someone who looks at the 15-minute on streams. I do look at the weekly and the daily quite often, and the 4-hour, so it's more of a high time frame thing. So when we go to World of Financial in 10 minutes or whatever, it's going to be the same thing I said last stream, because we haven't done anything in relation to what we did last stream, right? So, yeah. I should probably look at the chat. I haven't done that the entire stream. I have been abusing everybody. Bitcoin on rocks. Took a huge long on Bitcoin at 64k. Let me go to Bitcoin. That's pretty. I mean, all I can see is we have 66 free, and you took it long at 64. So that's very, very good. So where's 64? That's a very good long, actually. Yeah, especially if it's this low from the daily. It's a good catch. Very, very good catch. We got reversal formed. On the daily. Okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's a positive thing, which is good, which is what I want as well. Yeah, I hope we have positivity. Obviously, there's only so much logical you can. I mean, you know, people say, "Oh, yeah, you can't have emotions with the charts," and yeah, you shouldn't in terms of how you operate your trade. But you know, I can't say, "Oh, we will do this and we will do this," because it's never a guarantee. I can only say I hope we have this move based on my assumptions of the chart and what I can hope for based on what we have. But hopefully it's positive, and hopefully it continues to be positive, especially with the daily. Again, if we do print negative on the daily, it's not going to be very great for us. You know, if we continue to find resistance at the 4 hour and then come down, that will play into what we have going on the daily. If we have that going on the daily, then it's not as positive. But you know, it's you know, if we continue to do that on the daily and continue to move how we're moving so far, then I could expect this to be the start of a certain amount of chain of events which could occur in terms of finding that high move. Once we've had this wick past both these lows, we have this massive move up. We have a decent move back upwards, at least above. If we can get above equilibrium, which is you know, towards about 68.9, which we've seen plenty of resistance and support at. Because the main thing is, you know, we have it in resistance, we print past it, and then the next leg up is that 71.5, right? We can see with where we print with each one of these candles where we found it support, we printed it. Once we print through it, it's then finding support at the green area. Same thing here, we come to it as resistance in this candle, we find support at it, we then come to the red area as resistance. We then printed it as support, we then print through it, we come to the green area as resistance. This case, again, a lot more negative, which is why we have kind of this turning point where we form resistance in this price action on the way downwards, which has allowed us to find resistance in the equilibrium and the price action on the way downwards, which then allows us to continue to go a bit lower. So, you know, it would be nice to see a bit of support. We do actually kind of have a little gap here, I suppose, on 67. But other than that, again, it's time will tell. We have, in terms of the 4 hour, I want to say, oh yeah, on the daily, if we can print higher, then it's going to be great. But the 4 hour, we have this massive gap. We have this gap we've printed through, which we're kind of using now. We do technically have support in this area, and we have found it at 64.9, but it's not too hard of a task to go lower. You know, it's not too hard of a task to go lower in the slightest, which wouldn't be great for the daily. And if we daily continue to print, I've already talked about this, I need to stop talking about it, but if the daily continues to print towards 65 and can do so, it's not positive. You know, I mean, we've had a very, you know, we'll have a very negative trend. It's going to be us starting a continuation downwards, which will then all the way tie into what we have going on the monthly, which is this low, which again, is it too much to think we could go up? Just, you know, there we go. Is it too much to think in the next weekly candle, or not even next week candle, the current kind of weekly candle to go up towards this area? I think so. And this is why I was saying it. We're talking within this range. It's like the time is the real important aspect here. Can we really move upwards that fast, move that quickly to get to a point where we find this resistance before we print lower than this low? I don't think so. And not only will we be printing this low, we'll be printing through major gaps here. You know, so I do have a sneaking suspicion that next week, Monday, when we talk about this, we will have printed lower than this low. And what that means is we probably will at some point want to see that retracement back upwards to find that lower high before we continue to inevitably rip downwards even lower, right? So we'll have this massive gap, which we've reversed. We can see we printed at it quite nicely there. We probably will print there at 82. I mean, we could see some wicks back up into 87, 88, or 86 in this range. But I think ultimately on the monthly, we have this main monthly gap at 84. I think we're at least going to be printing lower than 84, within probably 82 for all these gaps and everything. So yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a negative time, and especially with this candle here, we probably could see somewhat resistance if we have this as a the last down close before we move higher. We could potentially see this as somewhat of a resistance if we kind of use the idea that we have a gap here, we printed higher than it, this could be a support, obviously then reversed it with resistance. We then can see the midpoint as around about 85.6 as well, so somewhere in between here, and if we use the candle body, it's within the gap as well, so there's resistance. Okay, it's all I'm saying is there's resistance. So yeah, it's not positive. Even if we are negative, I do still think we're going to see a retracement. Regardless of what we're doing, I think ultimately, higher time frame, we're going to see that retracement. It just depends on what that retracement what happens after the retracement, right? Anyways, I need to stop talking about Bitcoin because I'm going to spend the entire time talking about Bitcoin. Same story across the board. Even with the weekly, we're printing pretty much the same. Daily, what are we doing? Same story. We have again, this is where Solana differs. Bitcoin, Ethereum, they're the same coin, right? They're the same thing, just different numbers. Solana's a bit different, but it's kind of in cahoots with each other, with everything else. Well, we haven't quite got past this low, but we kind of have got past this low, so it's kind of a thing there. Again, 4 hour, we printed past this low. We haven't printed past this low, but it doesn't really matter because we have low, printed past. Bad. Massive gap, massive area. I can't talk about this line apart from going on the weekly. So that's kind of something to note. Not even the weekly. Oh no, I think it was 243 actually. I might be wrong. Where is it? Where's everything? Come on. I don't know why Solana's such a bug. Oh no, I know why. I know exactly why. I've got to click this down. There we go. Yes, this is a bit higher of a range because I actually need to go to here, because if we go down to here, we can see it doesn't print. There we go. Perfect. And it doesn't print here either. I'm just going to ignore them. I don't need them. I've had plenty of time without them. I don't need them again. So I don't know exactly where the equilibrium it's probably going to be here. Yeah, it's probably going to be about 88 somewhere. But regardless, we have resistance. We kind of came to it here quite nicely, actually. We kind of came to it very nicely. What is this area? I don't know what this is. Oh, it's probably something on the daily. I don't know. 1 hour? What is this? What have I drawn? Oh, it must be within the range. Okay, I know what it is. Yeah. So it's these two green candles. It must be in the range, which we can't see because it doesn't print properly on Solana. I just need to draw. I need to draw them out, but I don't want to. I think that's probably what it is, which we can see we've used twice now. Regardless, we've had a massive gap downwards. I'm going to say the same thing we talked about with everything else, right? Where we have probably somewhat of previous gaps, for example, like this area, which you can see we've used previously, where we've now reversed it, and it's within this gap, 82, 81.5. We've got resistance on Solana. We're probably going to see it come upwards to resistance, and, it depends on if we stay above this low. Same thing with Bitcoin, same thing with Ethereum. If across the board, we're all putting lower than this low, we're probably going to continue downwards. What that means is I think into next week, I don't think if we can stay low with all these numbers and all these lows, right? Because obviously it's Monday today. I think, and again, I suppose, Monday, sometimes people say, Monday can orchestrate the rest of the week and it can reverse the rest of the week. However, I don't care about that. I'm going to ignore that biasness. If we are printing lower than all these lows on every coin, basically, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, I think, personally, that we're probably just going to have a general negative week. I think the only point in which we could see super long-term positivity, which is going to be that monthly print, right? Now, again, will the monthly print take a few months to happen? I mean, will the monthly print and then the weekly candle we go upwards, right? So this is the monthly weekly, right? So this is going to take a long time to happen. But I think that bias, in terms of we have this low, if we found our stopping point, because again, we could have another monthly candle which goes lower towards 52k. So I do think there is that potential there. But I think, or in terms of Bitcoin, 52k again, across the board, it's probably 1200 Ethereum, 1100 Ethereum, whatever. Solana's case, I don't know exactly. I mean, maybe past towards this low at 68. We probably maybe got rejection block midpoint around about 73. Towards something like that, maybe $73-ish. But that's too high up. I think we have an area marked up here, to be fair. Oh, right, this is monthly. Oh, what is this? I think it's just these two candles, really. I think this must be on what we have with the gaps. So we have that, I suppose, $50. It's probably what I talked about, maybe $50. $45 for Solana. So we have these prices, right? This next massive leg down. So from there, and again, even with Solana, you can see it. We have that low. We're below it. We need to get above $95, and this is across the board, right? So if we aren't doing this, then we're probably going to see somewhat of. I mean, I think our low was really this monthly gap here, anyways. If we're not seeing this, we're definitely going to come towards this, $50, $40 actually towards that low, but about $40-ish, $50. So that's if we continue to print this low. Have we seen and this is the question then, is if we are going to see that low before the high, is this going to be the stopping point? Is this the low, right? Are we going to have one candle which prints past and then have that retracement before we go downwards? That's kind of the main question for me, which obviously we'll have to wait and see. But I think from there, regardless of if we see that major low, I do think there should be a decent retracement to whatever number it may be, whether we do see that major low, where in the sense that if we've had this major low and then we are going to continue lower, this whole range needs to be moved back up into. So if we do see this with that monthly negative print, I would definitely expect quite a sharp retracement back up into all this previous price action before we maybe potentially print even lower, right, across the board. But again, I think we've got very low points. This might take a while to get to if we don't see that immediate move down and the monthly is positive, because what would happen then would be we've seen that monthly print negative. We know across the board, weekly, monthly, daily, 4 hour, everything across the board is all negative. So we're eventually going to continue that trend downwards. However, that retracement would then allow us to, we've had this massive move down, small retracement, massive, quite a bit decent move downwards, monthly print lower, okay, negative. And then that's this move, right? This is the whole monthly thing. So if we've had this monthly thing, would we want to not want to see quite a decent monthly high or a lower high, which in the relative scope is quite high, So we could potentially see that maybe, in that regard. But that would just be us continuing a downtrend, right? Because we've had this whole reversal. We've had this monthly print negative potentially soon. If we can't see that move upwards, that's kind of what I'm expecting across the board. Either way, though, that's kind of Solana. Again, I know I've not given a lot of prices. I know I've not really given a lot of proactivity. Negative resistance down. Us go down. Sad times. Syrup. I don't really use the ranges in syrup. Anyways, what have we wanted? So let's go to the weekly, which is what we've been talking about for a long time now. We've wanted to see this gap here. 22, 21.5. We've kind of come toward, we're kind of 21.5 now. Our low is about 28. So it was this gap, right? It was this whole area here, and it was within this gap. Midpoint's about 27 as well. So, I mean, we could come toward that midpoint, whatever. Now, again, looking across the board, it's a hard thing because a lot of the time I look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, no matter what I'm looking at, whether it be PAC, I looked at Sui for a small period of time. Obviously now looking at World Financial, Syrup for a long time. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana always have kind of been within their own bubble together, right? Syrup's always kind of been outside of that. If you look at this price action versus everything else, it's just not even the same. So, do I want to be talking about us going upwards if we consider what's going on across the board? I do, because it's Syrup, and this is an area I've wanted since up here. Right, I've wanted it to come down all this time, and we've hit there. And this is monumentous moment. This is the time, right? This is the time. However, will we see that move upwards? I hope, right? Now, what would be nice is if on the weekly we've had this little move downwards, maybe we come towards that midpoint at 20 cent. If we can have this weekly print be at about 22 cent, coming up back up into here, and we kind of have this kind of print here, it would be nice to start to go back upwards, because it's not. I'm not talking randomly. Oh, I hope we go upwards now, because it's we've been going down. this whole time, the entire time, right? And it's only up until now where I want to see us go upwards. And it still feels like, oh, I don't know if we want to go upwards. Because this is it's not sort of a guarantee. This isn't a guarantee. We've hit the point of, okay, we need to start going up now. And I hope it does, and I want it to does. I want it to do. But, you know, there's always that apprehensiveness. But I have to stick with my guns. I have to stick with what I've talked about. We've talked about 22 cents, 21.5. In terms of what we have relative to this kind of weekly scope, we obviously have this massive gap, which is the main area. We're kind of coming towards that midpoint now, about 20 cents. If we can stay within this range here, and then print towards about 22 cents on the weekly candle, that would be pretty positive, I would suggest, and it would hopefully allow us to continue going upwards. Main thing being, we've had these kind of equal lows, and we've printed past them. So we have continued to print past these lows. And, you know, we should expect, even if we just look at it on a relative range scope, we should see a retracement regardless. It's just then that case of we then need to ignore this and reverse. We need to ignore this downtrend we've had and reverse and come upwards, because, you know, maybe it be too positive. You know, maybe this be too positive to go back up to all-time high. But if we really look at it, you know, we have a high, we have a low, we have a high, we have a low, potentially low. We have a move upwards. This is massive, right? This is a massive move. So I still stick my guns. So again, like I said, 20 cents. I could definitely see all the way down towards that 20 cent, right? Now, I know I said, oh, my low's 22, or my low's 21.5. It is. That's where I want it to print. That's where I think our low's going to be. I think it's still a good buying area, whether we have a small little downturn. And yes, if I wanted some tighter lows, I probably should be going to the 4-hour and looking at it on a wider scope. But a lot of the time I look at SERP, it's mainly on the weekly, right? So that's still what I think. I still think we go upwards. I still think this is our support. We'll see how it goes, right? But that's it. And again, with SERP, I normally do glance over it because my whole world of SERP has been on the weekly. So we're here now. This is great. And in terms of retracement, what I will talk about on a, whether it be us go upwards all the way or just a retracement, I still think across the board, I think we want to go upwards. Either because we're still in this downtrend and we want to go lower towards 13.7 or whatever. I still think we want this retracement, right? And then the main thing, because yes, this should be our main long-term support for us to go back to all-time highs. And even if it wasn't, if we just pay attention to the fact that we're in a downtrend, we've printed past these lows, we've come past equal lows, and we're in a major weekly gap and weekly support here with this main area here. So we're at support. This is just a undeniable fact. So, or not financial advice, whatever. So regardless of if it's a long-term 70 cent rip up or it's having a retracement, I do think we want to go upwards. And I'll concern myself with that reversal when we get there towards, if we use this gap again, towards 37 cent or 35 cent. You know, I'll concern myself then. But until then, I do want a retracement. That's my that's my line in the sand statement. I do want a move back upwards for SERP. Well, it's financial. I'm going to quickly go over this. I don't know if I can be bothered with the ranges. I'm going to try to do ranges. I think it's this and it's this, right? I think it's something like that. Oh no, I think we're a bit high. I can never remember. I need to write them down. There we go. Yeah, so we've talked about this. We've talked about the extension line. We've talked about the high. We've talked about us coming back upwards. We've had this gap within the VAD area with these two here. We've talked about us coming into it and finding resistance and coming back downwards. Cool. So, main thing. We technically have printed past extension downwards, right? But main thing is we've also technically printed past this extension. And we've also technically just come back down into the low. We also have this candle which also can subside in both these void and gap candles, which means we have a little itty-bitty gap here. I should probably mark out. That's not what I wanted. There we go. So we do have that area, right? So we can see we've kind of, once we've formed it, we've kind of used it a bit here. We are in the low area here as a support point. In terms of, we have order blocks. I want to see a positive printing order block which hasn't been used. So for example, we kind of have, we had this low, we have these two candles which will come past these highs, we have this low coming down past this low, we printed higher than it, and then we reversed it, right? So this in any world should be a rejection block. However, we've printed past it now. This should be an order block. So we can kind of see that's kind of being used within the right range, within this scope here. So that's kind of cool for a low, or for an area which could be paid attention to as a low. I think my main thing, regardless of if I'm picking straws or whatever the phrase is, we're at our high, right? We have this gap which is still technically subsiding within the main gap area. We have had resistance, we have used it, and we have come down. I do think we have potential. We have potential to use this area of support. And what do we want? And I think this is the thing as well. It's like, we can talk all we want about the intricacies of the daily and the 4 hour, but I want to come into talking about this on a bias. I don't want to look at things subjectivity. Oh my god, I don't know what's going on. I'm breaking down. I need to put myself on recharge. I don't know what's going on. I'm breaking down on this stream. We need to find a reason. We need to find a reason, whether it be on the weekly. We need to find our reason, right? I'm gonna delete this because this is old stuff. We need to find our reason to then talk about, because to be fair, I don't want to talk about charts with a bias, because then I can't look objectively at it. So for example, with Bitcoin, I want us to print higher than those lows, but objectively on the 4 hour, we're really negative, which is going to bleed through onto the daily. And if it bleeds through onto the daily, and we do see this massive resistance where we are, and we do come downwards, Bitcoin will print lower. What it will mean with Bitcoin printing lower is we'll go back upwards. Cool. However, it means longer term, we probably could continue to go back downwards. And we have the equilibrium, we have all these things. So, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I don't want that to happen, right? But I do want to look at what we want to happen to the chart to then be able to talk about it. I'm not going to expand the range. However, we do have this guy. You know, I am a lad. I'm going to expand the range. Okay, so again, we're at our low, we have support, we have this area on the way upwards, we have our gap, we have our void, we have everything, right? We have all the stuff going on. I don't know why I have those two candles. I think it must be like an order block, basically. We have these two candles going upwards, going down for the bodies of the candles here. However, I probably should be using the whole range for the high and the low, whatever. Main thing being, though, you know what, I will. Do I want to? No, I don't want to, my lad. It's being this gap, right? Because we're in this area, perfect. We have this gap, cool. Where does it sit? It's here. This is where it sits. And where does it sit? It also sits on this line, which is 14.65. We have this 15-cent range. And what I talked about last stream, I want to go up towards 15 cents. So we have support. We haven't come anywhere near the extension line. We've stayed within our support. You know, we have our main area staying above support. I think this is one of the extension lines. I don't know. I think it must be, because this isn't price action, so we kind of have that being used in some regard. Don't care though. We have support. You know, this is us using it as support in some sense. Again, it's not very pretty. I get that. Okay, nothing's ever perfect. We have it as support. We're having our difficulties on the daily and the 4 hour, but main thing should be we've printed past this low, and like I've said, you know, we print, no matter if we print past that low or we wick past it, we should expect to see that retracement, right? And we want to see that reversal when we hit our point of interest. And in our case, we don't have any price action, so we can only go off our math, which is, like I said, I want a balance of price action and math. So the less price action I have, the more math I have to use. The more price action I have, the less of the math I have to use. So occasionally I'll use high-low equilibrium and maybe extension lines. But I don't use these lines. I don't use the consequent encroachment. I don't use these little mini things. I don't use any of this, right? But in this sense, we've got no price action. So I have to use this high here. I have to use this area. I have to use these wicks here. I have to, because I don't have any price action to go off of. So in this sense, we've had this print past this major low. We've also found our potential point of interest, which could be this low point of the range we're in. You know, the range we're in. And from there, we could go upwards, right? Because we found our low printing past. We found our lower low. We then want to see our lower high. Trend, right? This is normal stuff, right? Because if we really look at it, ignoring this wacky candle, we have our move upwards. We want to see that move downwards, right? We want to see that high before we move downwards. So all that really means at the end of the day is us coming up towards 14.5 cents. And that's my story. That's my explanation of what I think Wellington Financial's doing. Take it as you will. I think we're doing really well. We have our bias, which is we want to go upwards. We have potential we're going upwards. Because again, we've used this area of resistance. This is a definite resistance area, right? However, we haven't had a massive expansionary response off it. We haven't had a major, oh no, yeah, it's over, guys. Yep, it's not a boom like that. We're doing perfectly fine. We had support at this extension line very, very nicely, right? We had all these kind of equal lows here. We wicked past them, and then we pumped. We basically had, coming into it, we had this range having all these highs, and then we wicked past it for this kind of manipulation. Then we pumped upwards, which is very cool. And then we came up towards our gap at the high. We filled the entire thing. This is probably somewhat of a rejection block, to be fair, but whatever. Used it. Now we're kind of coming down towards our high. We have this gap on the daily. We have our order block on the 4 hour we're kind of using. Could hopefully expect to see a bit of a reversal back upwards. Because if we really look at the range, we have the low for a high, we have a low. We then have the range where we did form a high, but then we kind of stayed here, and now we've pumped upwards and we've printed. So this could now be the start of a bit of an uptrend before we get up towards 14.5 cent being here, before we dump back downwards towards somewhere maybe at equilibrium, somewhere. Where's the next leg down? Because again, this is now price discovery. So I have to go off the math, which is going to be 8 cent, right? This equilibrium starting point. We have all these lows we definitely want to get past. So we definitely could probably see a, we have a bit of an uptrend. We get past these lows. We definitely print at expansion or the high. We then continue towards equilibrium. And from there, we'll see how we go. But we have definitely started a downtrend on the weekly. Monthly's got no price action. But even on the monthly, we could be starting a downtrend. And we've had that move upwards, and we've been coming down ever since, right? Weekly, we're definitely starting this downtrend. Daily, we're starting a bit of an uptrend to eventually start that downtrend. So I think all in all, I think it's very good. I think it's very clear price action on Wellington Financial. I'm pretty happy with my opinions. Again, this is all opinions, this isn't financial advice. Pretty happy with my opinions, though, on Wellington Financial. So we'll see how it goes, like I said. Again, hopefully it does this. None of this is financial advice. I'm not professional, but these are my opinions. So thank you, all of you, for being here. Like I said last stream, though, this stream was definitely just something, or this stream and Thursday stream, in terms of the charts anyway, they're just streams, right? They're just to pass the time. Until we hit that Monday stream next week, this is just to pass the time. The importance is going to be really placed on that Monday stream, because, again, we will have moved a bit more during the 4 hour and daily trends we have going on the Bitcoin and everything else. The main thing, again, being that monthly print. If we do print that negative print, and we find our support at this monthly support we're at, it's still negative. It's really negative across the larger time frame for Bitcoin. However, or across the board. But however, though, it's still a good sign for if we want a retracement. So I still could see that retracement. I've already talked about this. I'm not going to yap about it too much more, but it's still a good thing to look at. It's still something to pay attention to, and I think it's going to be very important for what we see on Monday. So that's it from me, though. Thank you so much. I don't know if we've got a Wednesday stream. I have been working on a rewrite. I kind of just pulled everything out of the game, and I'm working on a rewrite. So see how much I can get done before Wednesday to kind of clean it up, because we have some issues in the game. We've just got some of these, these timing issues. Right? I'm just going to rewrite it. So we might see you Wednesday. If not, we have a Wednesday after. Nonetheless, though, I'm back on Thursday, and obviously back on Saturday to see. I'll have a Saturday stream, don't I? Oh, okay. Well, we'll get through them. Again, I'm really focused on this Monday stream. I'm really focused on Monday, and I really am so interested to see how we print on the monthly. See how it goes. Thank you, all of you. See you 11/11. Shout out to your loved ones and the loved ones who've passed away, if you believe in 11/11. Thank you, all of you. See you guys next stream. See you guys on Telegram. That's it from me. Where is my... There it is. Thank you. Goodbye.